Am I the Ahole for not being affectionate or intimate with my husband because I am mentally exhausted? Over the past year, my husband, 29, and I, 31, have been experiencing challenges with intimacy, which I believe stem from other marital problems and my overall mental well-being. We have been together for more than 5 years, but have only been married for approximately 6 months and have been cohabitating for about a year and a half. Previously, we enjoyed a very fulfilling sex life, and I have no complaints about my husband's performance in the bedroom. Recently, however, I have lost all interest in having sexual relations. It's not that I do not want to be intimate with my husband. Instead, it feels as if my libido has completely vanished, and just the thought of sex seems unpleasant. In the past year, we have faced several other issues in our relationship. My concerns primarily revolve around his lack of assistance or support, his inability to prioritize our family, and the feelings of neglect or unlove I experience from him. Initially, he had no complaints about me, but as our arguments increased, he began to express that I am a mean person. Now, his main issue is that I am not affectionate or intimate enough. To summarize briefly, we have been going through a lot. To start, my husband has a 7-year-old daughter, whom I love dearly and have been a part of her life for nearly her entire existence. My husband had primary custody, and she was with us about 90% of the time due to an arrangement he made with his ex-partner outside of court. When his ex learned we were moving in together, she suddenly wanted to see her daughter more often, which we viewed positively. We want her to know her mother, and as she grows older and asks more questions, my husband has been striving to facilitate their time together. Accordingly, the schedule was modified, and she was with us about 65% of the time and with her mother about 35%. However, when his ex found out we were getting married, she began to withhold their daughter from him, forcing my husband to file with the courts. This situation alone has created significant stress in our lives. We cannot afford the legal fees, and living in a mother state, my husband is continually disadvantaged despite being his daughter's primary caregiver throughout her life. To date, we have incurred around $30,000 in attorney fees, and the situation is still unresolved. This financial burden cropped up right after I paid for our wedding, which amounted to nearly $10,000. Financially, we are in dire straits. I considered canceling the wedding, but since it was almost fully paid for, I felt it would be wasteful. This financial strain compounded the stress of planning a predominantly do-it-yourself wedding. Fast forward to the wedding weekend, we discovered that our address was no longer within the school district boundaries for his daughter. Prior to this, my husband had been classified as the custodial parent since his daughter attended school in our district. Consequently, his ex went to court, demanding majority custody and custodial rights due to her daughter's impending school change. To prevent this, we had to find a new residence within the school boundaries, leading us to move to the only available place that fit our timeline. Although it was significantly more expensive, it was also smaller and in worse condition. We had to relocate immediately after our wedding. Throughout all of this, the issues I had with my husband became increasingly apparent. I became the sole individual managing everything. I earn approximately $70,000 a year, while he earns around $30,000. This disparity had never bothered me. I had always been willing to cover more financial responsibilities than he did, but it only became an issue when I started feeling exploited. I have shouldered about 90% of the attorney fees, most of the wedding expenses, and the majority of our household bills and groceries. Nonetheless, I would not have considered this a problem if he had been working diligently to contribute and supporting me in other areas of our lives. I communicated my feelings to him, but he failed to make those contributions. He frequently took time off work, never assisted with household chores, and avoided responsibilities related to the wedding. Whenever custody matters arose, he would completely withdraw, leaving me to handle those aspects on my own, communicating with the lawyer, keeping track of court dates and paperwork, etc. It felt, and continues to feel, as if I alone bear the weight of the world, expected to manage everything independently. We began to argue about this regularly, and he began to label me as mean. While I acknowledge that I can be unkind at times, especially when I become frustrated, I recognize this is an undesirable trait. In the heat of the moment, I tend to raise my voice and address issues negatively. He then claims, Why would I help you when you're just mean to me all the time? Before our wedding, we had a discussion to resolve our issues, acknowledging that our situation was unhealthy and needed to change. We both agreed to make necessary adjustments. Since that conversation, I feel I have made a concerted effort to implement those changes, while he has not. I still sometimes lose my temper, however, I have made significant progress. I don't lash out as frequently, nor do I intentionally make hurtful comments. While I am still a work in progress, I believe I have made improvements. Unfortunately, his efforts have not mirrored mine. He recently joined a new band, a pursuit I encouraged due to his passion for music, yet I had him promise that it would not take precedence over our family. He has already skipped a father-daughter dance for band commitments, and nearly every gig interferes with his time spent with her. I still lack support in household matters. I often have to plead for his help, and when he does assist, it may only occur briefly before another 2 months pass without any further effort, during which he claims, "I just cleaned the whole house for you." He promised to pick up more shifts at work due to my struggling to cover most of our expenses alone and our mounting debt, yet he has only taken on 2 additional shifts in 4 months, one of which was mandatory during the Christmas season. Currently, I am working 70 hours a week. A coworker is on maternity leave, and I eagerly volunteered to fulfill her role during her absence, allowing me to accumulate a considerable amount of overtime. I wake up at 4:30 a.m., work 12 hours from Monday to Saturday, then return home to a messy house, and usually end up caring for his daughter alone while he is either working or at band practice. I am utterly exhausted. In December, we attended one therapy session, which initially felt promising. My husband admitted that he had been neglecting his duties as a husband, and the therapist pointedly asked him, "What is wrong with you? This is your wife. She is doing so much for you. Why can't you do the dishes?" Following the discussion on our intimacy issues, the overall conclusion was that he feels unloved because I am not interested in sex, and I feel unloved because he does not provide support or prioritize me. Consequently, we are stuck in a cycle. We agreed that our next step should involve creating an equitable partnership in our lives, in the hopes that intimacy would subsequently return. For about 2 weeks, things improved. My husband took on that extra shift, cleaned during his days off, and we were intimate. However, shortly after we regained intimacy, he reverted to his previous behavior, ceasing all efforts. Since we cannot afford further therapy, we have not returned, but we would both be open to the idea if finances allowed. Regarding sex, intimacy, and general affection, I believe there are numerous reasons preventing me from being into it at the moment. My husband insists it is because I do not love him or am not attracted to him, which feels incredibly frustrating because it undermines my efforts to provide for him and build a life together. I often feel unloved because he does not support me as I support him. During our arguments, he frequently threatens divorce, only to apologize afterward, which is disheartening. He is genuinely sweet and exceptionally affectionate, never cruel to me. He consistently compliments me, expresses his love, and seeks physical closeness. He believes I should recognize his love based on his words and affectionate gestures, while I maintain that actions convey a stronger message. He claims I do not love him because of my lack of affection and desire for intimacy. I argue that my love is evident in the countless ways I care for him and his daughter, and we find ourselves perpetually circling back to the same arguments. I should note that, in recent months, I have not completely allowed him to take advantage of me. I have established a few boundaries, though I admit I am not always strict about them. He has started contributing half of the bills and purchasing some groceries. He performs minor acts of kindness, such as fetching me a drink from the fridge or warming up my food, which I appreciate, but those gestures are not what I truly need. I can manage those tasks myself. They are not the source of my stress. The reality is that my life would be less complicated without him, which is a painful realization, as I do not desire that outcome. His life would be more challenging without mine, and at times it feels as if he remains with me solely for that reason. It's not that I do not want to fulfill my role. I just do not have the same longing or sense of need to do so, which is difficult to articulate. When he asks why I do not want to have sex, I typically respond that I am tired, as that is truthful. At face value, it seems there is no specific reason hindering my interest. I simply do not feel inclined. However, upon reflecting on our past year, particularly following the therapy session, I realize that my lack of intimacy may be subconsciously linked to my treatment experience. Much of my overall mental exhaustion feels tied to both life's challenges and a sense of unreciprocated love from my husband. Mental strain does not dissipate until the underlying issues are addressed. I genuinely believe that if he were consistently helping me in all aspects of life, household duties, finances, parental support, etc., I would experience significantly less stress, anxiety, and depression, leading to a renewed desire for intimacy. Of course, I cannot confirm this for certain. On the other hand, I understand his perspective. Who wants to be in a sexless or intimate deficient marriage? I recognize that this is not typical, particularly in a new marriage. Perhaps I should separate this issue from our other complications and consult my doctor about it. For context, I have been on antidepressants since before our relationship began. Although I had never previously encountered intimacy issues while on selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, I switched to Wellbutrin after experiencing prolonged feelings of disinterest, but it has not remedied the situation. I'm aware that my post is biased and portrays him in a negative light, largely stemming from my current feelings, yet I love him deeply and wish to navigate beyond this impasse. The longest period we have gone without sex is approximately 6 to 8 weeks, and it has now been about a month since our last intimate encounter. There have been instances when I was disinclined to have sex, but chose to go through with it for his sake, leaving me feeling worse and guilty for my lack of enthusiasm. I am in no way attempting to withhold sex to compel him to handle household chores or other responsibilities. It is not that I harbor any animosity towards him. Generally, we enjoy each other's company immensely. He is the person I long to be with, but I simply do not feel the desire for intimacy and would rather relax on the couch, watching something together than have sex. Am I in the wrong for not attempting to be intimate more often? I apologize if this comes across as lengthy, disorganized, or fails to cover crucial details. I don't know if anyone will take the time to read this, especially since I am a new user and have never posted before. Nonetheless, articulating my thoughts tends to provide relief, so I thought I would give this a try. Story 2. BF, M24, was still healing from a toxic breakup when we first met. Took a week of space to heal 2 months in with me, F22, before stating he was finally over it. It's been a year, and I can't get over the break. Need advice on whether he did me dirty or I took him the ah. Hello, summary at the end. My boyfriend and I met a year ago and quickly formed a connection over various shared interests. We have now been together for a year, and he has proven to be an incredibly affectionate, responsible, and loyal individual. From the outset, he was honest and communicative about his feelings. He disclosed that he was almost there in the healing process from a tumultuous breakup that occurred just 2 months before we met. By our second date, he explained that he was still recovering but genuinely appreciated our connection. We decided to take things slow, especially since we learned he had received a job offer for a 3-month summer gig in City A while we live in a different city. Both of us were somewhat apprehensive about a long-distance relationship. His previous breakup had been long-distance during a particularly difficult phase filled with arguments, which almost led him to depression. Therefore, he was worried that we might argue and preferred to be exclusive. He was sure that when he returned in 3 months, he would want to make our relationship official. He expressed his commitment to me alone, and we decided to become exclusive around our 3rd date. From there, things picked up quickly. We spent time together 3 to 4 times a week for a month and a half, during which we both expressed our love for each other while intoxicated. When I asked him sober if he meant it, he affirmed that it was an undeniable yes, so he truly wanted me in his life. By the 3rd date, when I inquired whether he had moved on from his ex, he insisted that he had and stated he no longer thought about her, feeling happy with our relationship. Despite this, he occasionally shared stories and unintended comparisons, insisting they were mere anecdotes without emotional significance, a stance he still holds. He noted that I was always depicted more favorably in these comparisons. Since our relationship was so different from his previous toxic partnership, any comparisons only highlighted how content he felt with me. However, during the 2nd month of our relationship, He relocated to another city for 3 months, and we began to have frequent disagreements. As he had feared, work kept him busy, while I often sought his attention, asking him to stay connected with me. Although he acknowledged his work commitments, he called me daily, but I began dealing with family issues, which caused me to lash out or cry in front of him. In the last week before our break, he started mentioning his ex again, and when I asked him if he was truly over her, he confirmed that he was. Nonetheless, he confessed he sometimes wondered what might have been if she hadn't caused their breakup, given how invested he was at the time. He claimed that while he wasn't harboring feelings for her, he still sought closure regarding their situation, explaining that he was rationally over her, but still emotionally tied. However, he clearly stated he had no wish to reconnect with her. He maintained that I was much more significant to him, emphasizing that I offered the best connection he'd had in years, which made any decision simple for him. There were comments that troubled me, such as when I asked why he stopped sending me good morning texts for a week. He revealed that he had never wished anyone good morning before his ex motivated him to do so, associating it as a memory tied to her. If I hadn't mentioned it, he felt he would move on from it quickly. He later claimed he was just overwhelmed and didn't mean anything by that behavior, admitting he had acted out of character during that 1.5-week period, and that he hadn't talked about her as much at any other time, even before or after our break. One day, during a fight, I voiced my frustrations about my family, and he suggested that we take some space, offering to wait for me because we were both feeling drained. I became angry and challenged him on whether he really wanted space. He replied, not at the moment, but acknowledged that he dealt well with space. Eventually, I pressed him on the topic, and he confessed that our relationship did not seem as idyllic anymore. He explained that my mood often weighed him down, work stress was piling up, and he was missing the presence of his ex in his life. I became upset and asked if he was feeling any romantic attachment, which led him to give me a vague response. I insisted that he clarify whether he didn't fully like me, and he ultimately answered in a way that felt like a reluctant affirmation. Furious, I told him to leave me alone. He insisted it was never a matter of choice for him and was adamant that even if his ex asked him to reconcile, he would refuse. He asserted he was still my boyfriend and required a week of personal time to clear his mind, assuring me he wanted to be with me and just needed to deal with this last emotional hurdle. He promised to return in 1 week and insisted it wouldn't be a competition because he loved me far more than anyone else. He just wanted to prevent any long-term hurt by postponing this emotional closure, since he understood that people need time to process their past before moving on in a serious relationship. He stressed he was trying hard, considering we had only been together for 2 months, and he did not want to prolong the hurting. I abruptly ended the call. A week later, he texted me, sharing that he had found closure and felt no lingering feelings, just confusion. He revealed that the time apart made him realize he was merely curious about her life, especially since she had previously confided in him about her job prospects. Although they broke up, he never learned what happened to her afterward. While he mentioned he did not care about her emotionally, the curiosity lingered. He told me he sent her a text congratulating her on her graduation, and they briefly discussed their jobs. He admitted to checking her social media profile once or twice out of curiosity, but he acknowledged he also looked at mine and that it was never a matter of choice. He clarified that he would only congratulate her for graduating, as they had been friends before their relationship. He showed me the conversation history, which contained no flirtation and was purely friendly. In one exchange, he referred to her as a foodie when she mentioned a nearby restaurant and called her a penguin based on a harmless meme he sent her. He explained that penguin was an endearing nickname from her father and an inside joke that had nothing to do with romantic intentions. He reassured me that he is friendly with all his colleagues in the same manner and that his commitment to me would make it clear if he were genuinely flirting. He has always been quite open in our relationship. I eventually accepted this and told him not to communicate with her. He agreed. He repeatedly stressed that she had moved on in life, and so had he. He acknowledged that his curiosity was natural, but now felt he found closure. Jokingly, he mentioned not understanding why she had worried so much when she ultimately landed a job. Therefore, he felt he had resolved that chapter, and we resumed our relationship. There were still 2 months of long distance ahead, yet we visited each other frequently, enjoying affectionate and loving moments. Once the long distance concluded and he returned fully, I borrowed his phone one day and discovered messages from her. When I asked him about it, he immediately opened the chat and handed me his phone. She had reached out to him 3 times on her own over the next 2 months, initiating small talk about seeing him on LinkedIn and requesting a reference regarding a chair or responding to his social media stories. He never initiated any conversations, but replied politely. He did send one meme, but it wasn't flirty. He felt she would appreciate it due to her sense of humor. I mentioned to him that this behavior seemed unnecessary and strange, especially because I had asked him not to talk to her. He replied that he didn't see those brief conversations as significant enough to warrant informing me. Each conversation had about 20 days between them and was quite minimal. In fact, he left his last response as a draft and unsent, which gave the impression that he was indifferent. He apologized, admitting that it was his mistake for failing to recall that I had asked him to refrain from contacting her. He explained that it was against his principles to ghost anyone, emphasizing he treats everyone with decency, not just her. He asked how I wanted to proceed, expressing his desire to ensure I felt comfortable. Regardless, he reiterated that he held no feelings for her, maintaining that if she were to ask about me, he would inform her about our relationship. He also stated, like with any other exes in his life, he had no desire to be her friend or to reach out on his own since he truly doesn't care for her anymore. He also expressed he wouldn't want to hear about her subsequent relationships, as learning about her moving on would act as an unwelcome reminder that he had invested in a relationship that ended poorly. He promised not to let that situation hurt or upset him, adding that he had no issues sharing details about me with her, especially since he had already posted about me. I told him he needed to block her, and while he agreed, he explained it was important for me to understand this was an exception to his principle of maintaining complete trust in a relationship and not cutting people off without reason. He acknowledged she was irrelevant in his life, but he emphasized he couldn't be controlled regarding other matters and wanted me to trust him concerning his commitment. He has never given me a reason to doubt his loyalty, insisting that cheating should be illegal. Ultimately, we both blocked her, and now it's been a year since all that drama occurred. I am seeking advice on whether he made the right choices during our break, the outreach to his ex, and how he handled everything afterward. He has been a wonderful partner to me, but I can't help but feel inadequate when comparing myself to his ex. He maintains that he never loved her while with me, and he took the time apart to ensure our relationship could thrive. He insists that I am the best relationship he has experienced. How can I let this go? I genuinely want to know if he is a good man. I have no doubt that he has never cheated and never will. My last lingering fear is about his ex being part of our early relationship, even if they weren't in contact. People are complex, and I can't control when I meet someone. Should I let it all go? Did he betray me, or did he handle everything properly? Summary: TLDR. My boyfriend, while healing from a toxic breakup, initiated a brief 1-week break 2 months into our relationship for closure. During this time, he sent a congratulatory text to his ex on her graduation communication that was not premeditated. They had no contact prior, and he showed me the messages, which were friendly, not flirty. I once casually mentioned he should avoid her, but she initiated small conversations, which he politely responded to without ever starting them. Upon discovering this, I asked him to block her, which he did, although he typically believes in not cutting people off. A year later, I still feel insecure about my place in his past, worrying that I wasn't enough to distract him from her. He reassures me that he never loved her during our relationship and took that time for us. He has been a supportive partner, but I struggle with comparisons and fears of inadequacy. Did he do the right thing, or did he betray me? How can I move on? Story 3. Aita for planning to get revenge on my ex-best friend. I am a senior in high school, and this occurred last year towards the very end of my junior year. I had been friends with this girl, let's refer to her as Jane, for several years, and I genuinely considered her a sister and cared for her deeply. This also meant that we both confided in each other about many personal matters. However, as someone who has been made a therapist by my own parents, I ensured Jane understood that she could tell me to stop talking at any time, and I would be perfectly fine with that because I didn't want her to feel obligated to listen. I shared many things I had never revealed to anyone, including the emotional unavailability of both my parents and their tendency to engage in frequent and loud arguments. Jane shared a great deal with me as well, but I will not disclose any of that publicly. Last year, my school offered an opportunity to attend a summer trip to Italy. Since a significant portion of my heritage is Italian, my family has not been in North America for very long. I seized the opportunity, and my family spent thousands of dollars for me to go and provided me with everything I required for the trip. This money was saved by both of my parents and supplemented by contributions from other family members. Jane and several new friends she had recently introduced me to were also going on this trip. The main issue arose over a club at my school. For context, I attend a Catholic all-girls school, and surprisingly, they had a gay-straight alliance, the only real reason I considered joining besides being a legacy student. I am bisexual and greatly appreciated having that space to bond and share experiences with other LGBTQ individuals and allies. During this period, I had been on the board of the club and absolutely enjoyed it. I am, and still am, passionate about this club and its mission, even though it does not receive much attention or acknowledgement from the administration compared to other clubs representing different marginalized groups. However, there was a girl, let's call her Maria, who intended to run for a position on the board. I would not have minded this, but Maria had not attended a club meeting in over a year. Additionally, according to the 3 other board members at the time, Maria had previously been on the board but did not contribute anything meaningful. Being someone who loves this club dearly, I expressed that I did not believe Maria should be allowed to run, particularly not for the position of club president, as I had heard she intended to do so. I was subsequently told that it sounded as though I was trying to prevent someone from taking my place on the board because I was planning to run for president myself, despite the fact that there were 2 other girls running for the position whom I had no issues with. So, confiding in Jane, who I frequently turned to, and who is also LGBTQ, I sought her advice. I explained everything to her, and how stressed I felt because I couldn't bear to see the only truly safe space for me at this school fall apart. I vented to her, but noticed halfway through that she appeared tired and upset, so I decided to stop talking. Jane then became annoyed and insisted that I continue, urging me in a very condescending manner. I already felt anxious, but I continued, and soon it escalated to me crying and expressing everything that had been going on recently. My parents arguing, my overwhelming burnout, the stress of searching for colleges, and my feelings of inadequacy, along with the whole situation regarding the gay-straight alliance. Jane suddenly erupted, yelling at me in the middle of the cafeteria that I had no right to prevent the girl from running for president, asserting that anyone should have the right to do so, keep in mind. She had not attended a gay-straight alliance meeting in 2 years. She called me helpless and pathetic, derogated the gay-straight alliance as a worthless club, and further humiliated me in front of her new friends who laughed at my expense. As previously mentioned, I regularly experience loud yelling at home, so when Jane shouted at me, I froze and had a significant internal breakdown. I remained quiet for a while, until she noticed and coldly remarked that she was sorry I was triggered before she stomped off. I did not approach the counselors afterward because I had already faced bullying from them and most staff members throughout my entire 3 years at this school. Thus, when I was summoned by the dean and counselor, I was terrified. It turned out Jane had disclosed everything about my home life to them, falsely claiming that my parents were unsupportive of my sexuality and alleging that they physically abused me and my siblings. This prompted me to ghost Jane for 2 weeks before I decided to allow her the opportunity to explain herself. I arranged to meet with her after school one day to discuss everything, but she ended up being late. One of my other friends, who supported me throughout this entire ordeal, let's call her Sarah, discovered that Jane had been over an hour late because she was scared to face me and had been crying to a teacher. Sarah also overheard Jane lying to the teacher about the situation, portraying me as the villain while also disclosing my private history regarding my mental health and home life. I met Sarah outside of the classroom, and we were able to hear most of Jane's comments. Jane had also told the teacher the same lies about my family that she had shared with the counselor, while introducing a new falsehood stating that I was suicidal and wanted to harm myself. I returned to the meeting point to wait for Jane, and when she finally arrived, she made excuses for her behavior while I tried to speak with her. Afterward, she went to Sarah and began disparaging me over text and phone calls. Sarah still has these messages. This ultimately led to me being confronted by the dean and principal a few days later, and as a result of the situation, I was removed from the Italy trip, leading to the loss of the $6,000 my family spent on travel expenses, not to mention the hundreds of dollars wasted on new clothes, a new suitcase, and so forth. Switching to the present day, do you remember Maria? The girl who wanted to run for the presidency of the Gay Straight Alliance. Not only did she become club president, but she also failed to attend any meetings for 4 months, and today, I learned from Sarah that she dropped out of our school. Now, I feel compelled to confront Jane, to demonstrate that I was right and she was wrong. Not only did I lose nearly all my friends due to her actions, she lied to most of them, turning them against me, but my family also was not reimbursed for the money we spent on the Italy trip, so Sarah and I feel it is only fair to take some action to show Jane that I was justified. P.S. I apologize for the disjointed nature of this message. This is my first time posting here, and this story contains so much that it felt important to include everything.